In 30 BC, two ancient titans, Rome and Egypt, stood on the brink of a cataclysmic showdown. Amid the desert sands and the monumental shadows of the Nile's temples, an Egyptian force of 30,000 warriors faced off against the might of Roman legions commanded by the shrewd and unyielding Octavian. Could the charismatic Queen Cleopatra and her embattled partner Mark Antony salvage an empire that dazzled the world for centuries? Or would Rome's disciplined ranks extinguish Egypt's final flame of independence forever? Strap in for a sprawling, 2-hour deep dive into the last stand of an ancient civilization, where ambition, love, and lethal strategy shaped the fate of the Mediterranean world. Welcome to Fate of an Empire, Rome versus Egypt, the final battle of 30K warriors. In this extensive documentary, we revisit the epic events leading up to one of history's most dramatic confrontations. Over the next 2 hours, you'll travel from the opulent palaces of Alexandria to the war councils of Rome, tracing the crescendos of Cleopatra and Mark Antony's alliance, and the unstoppable rise of Octavian, the future Augustus. Expect to see the political chess played in the Roman Senate, Cleopatra's desperate attempts to save her dynasty, and the scorching landscapes where tens of thousands of soldiers marched toward destiny. Explore a saga where cunning espionage, clashing armies, and personal ambition determined the course of history. If you're ready to witness how Rome finally subdued its greatest threat, turning Egypt into a Roman province, then you're in the right place. Let's embark on a journey through grandeur, despair, and final acts of defiance that echo through millennia. Before Egypt's final standoff, Rome itself was in turmoil. The twilight of the Republic saw ambitious generals, Julius Caesar, Pompey, and later Mark Antony, clashing for ultimate control. Civil war after civil war battered the Roman political system, eroding the old structures of senatorial power. During these chaotic years, Cleopatra sought powerful Roman patrons to maintain Egypt's independence. As Caesar's protege, and later Antony's partner, she wove a precarious web of alliances. But the real challenge emerged when Octavian, Caesar's adopted son, turned from ally to rival, keen on cementing his authority over Rome. The stage was set for a final bloody confrontation that would ripple across the Mediterranean. No figure captivated the ancient world like Cleopatra VII, the last active ruler of the Ptolemaic kingdom. Fluent in multiple languages, she was both an able politician and a charismatic diplomat. Determined to preserve Egypt's autonomy in the face of Roman encroachment, Cleopatra aligned first with Julius Caesar, bearing him a son. After Caesar's assassination, she turned her gaze to Mark Antony, forging a partnership that was as romantic as it was political. Their union brought Cleopatra recognition in the Eastern Mediterranean, but also deepened the rift between Antony and Octavian. Roman propaganda portrayed her as a manipulative foreign queen, fueling the Senate's backing of Octavian's war efforts. Yet, inside Egypt, she was revered as a strong, divine monarch, Aphrodite incarnate, mother of a new Egyptian golden age. She held the hearts of 30,000 Egyptian warriors who would fight to defend her throne. Back in Rome, Mark Antony was no stranger to politics and warfare. He had served under Caesar and emerged as part of the Second Triumvirate, with Octavian and Lepidus. Initially, Antony governed the eastern provinces, where he and Cleopatra solidified their bond. Yet, he faced a dire predicament: return to Rome to placate the Senate, or remain in Alexandria, championing Cleopatra's cause. Each passing day in Egypt frayed his standing in Rome, handing Octavian ever more ammunition to brand him a traitor ensnared by an Eastern queen. In lavish Alexandrian celebrations, Antony crowned Cleopatra Queen of Kings and recognized her children as royalty, acts that the Roman Senate seethed at. As the friction grew, Antony raised an army to confront Octavian, hoping to unify Roman forces loyal to him with Egypt's 30,000 warriors. The final clash loomed, unstoppable. Ever the master of propaganda, Octavian leveraged Roman outrage against Antony and Cleopatra. Publicly, he accused them of plotting to divide the empire, claiming Antony was squandering Roman resources on a decadent foreign power. In a theatrical move, Octavian read Antony's supposed will to the Senate, alleging Antony intended to be buried in Egypt, a sacrilege in Roman eyes. Horrified senators granted Octavian extraordinary powers, effectively authorizing an invasion of Egypt. Roman legions assembled in southern Italy, prepared to sail east and crush the Egyptian menace. By 32 BC, diplomacy had collapsed. Cleopatra and Antony braced themselves, reinforcing coastal defenses and forging alliances across the eastern Mediterranean. Egypt's 30,000 strong, comprising local Egyptians, Greek mercenaries, and Eastern auxiliaries, stood ready to defend their queen. The first test of strength arrived at Actium in 31 BC. Antony and Cleopatra's combined fleets clashed with Octavian's under Admiral Agrippa. Though Cleopatra's ships boasted heavier galleys, Agrippa's nimble tactics and superior seamanship forced Antony into a perilous retreat. Cleopatra famously withdrew mid-battle, leading to whispers that her presence had sown confusion in Antony's ranks. Yet, the real final confrontation awaited on Egyptian soil. Unwilling to abandon Cleopatra, Antony retreated to shore, consolidating what remained of his legions. Among them stood 30,000 Egyptians, loyal to the last. Octavian, seizing the advantage, launched a calculated pursuit. Siege warfare and pitched battles along the Nile soon shaped a final desperate conflict that would decide Egypt's fate. With his victory at Actium secure, Octavian wasted no time. His legions, numbering in the tens of thousands, set out for Egypt by land and sea. Harsh deserts tested their resolve, but Roman discipline and logistical prowess ensured consistent supplies of water and rations. War elephants from northern Africa, cavalry from allied Berber tribes, and seasoned legionaries pressed forward. Spy networks reported that Antony's once mighty forces had dwindled. The real threat, they warned, lay in those steadfast 30,000 Egyptian soldiers, passionately defending their homeland under Cleopatra's banner. Octavian's generals dismissed talk of Egyptian barbarism, though they'd soon learn the fierce resilience behind Cleopatra's final stand. The Roman war machine marched relentlessly on, guided by their charismatic leader's vow to subjugate Egypt once and for all. Alexandria, the glittering capital founded by Alexander the Great, prepared for its darkest hour. Its libraries still guarded centuries of knowledge. The pharaoh's lighthouse still guided ships, and Cleopatra's palace shimmered in the sunlight. But gloom overshadowed the city. Roman forces advanced daily, while the people prayed for a miracle. Cleopatra fortified the harbor, placing archers and ballistae atop the pharaohs. She stockpiled grain and positioned the 30,000 Egyptian warriors along strategic walls, streets, and city gates. Markets emptied as panic buying set in, and wealthy families fled inland. Yet many loyalists stayed, buoyed by Cleopatra's promise of glory. or stirred by the rumor that Antony's legionaries would never abandon them. Little did they know, final reckoning approached like a desert wind at dusk. Antony, advised by Cleopatra's generals, orchestrated a bold plan to stall the Roman advance. Along a narrow desert pass, Egyptian skirmishers hid amidst rocky outcroppings. At midday, with the sun blinding Roman eyes, they launched a coordinated ambush. Showers of arrows rained down. War chariots thundered in from the flanks. For a fleeting moment, the Romans wavered. Egyptian horns bellowed triumphantly as 30,000 men unleashed their fury. But Octavian's legionaries quickly regrouped, forming tight defensive formations, returning a volley of javelins. Though the ambush inflicted heavy losses, it couldn't fully halt Rome's march. With discipline restored, Octavian's columns pushed onward, determined to break into the heart of Cleopatra's realm. Still, the ambush was a jolt, revealing that Cleopatra and Antony's army was far from beaten. Seeing the unfolding disaster, Cleopatra sent envoys to Octavian's camp, proposing a negotiated peace. She offered tributes, trade concessions, even a personal alliance, anything to spare Alexandria from destruction. Antony, torn by pride and diminishing morale, saw negotiations as betrayal. Octavian, emboldened by his unstoppable approach, refused Cleopatra's overtures unless she surrendered Antony outright. Roman propaganda had long depicted her as the seductive Queen of the East, corrupting Roman virtue. Granting her mercy would risk his reputation. Within Alexandria's walls, whispers of heartbreak and betrayal circulated. Cleopatra stood at a crossroads. Deliver Antony to Octavian's blade, or fight a final stand with her 30,000 men. With hearts resolute, Cleopatra and Antony chose to defend their city to the bitter end. By midsummer, Octavian's legions ringed Alexandria, fortifying siege lines around the city's perimeter. The stage was set for a decisive confrontation. Inside the city, Cleopatra's 30,000 warriors braced themselves behind tall walls, while Antony organized Roman-style defenses around key gates. Civilians fled deeper into the heart of Alexandria, crowding temples and libraries. Cleopatra moved through the ranks, clad in royal armor, inspiring her troops with promises of immortal glory if they repelled the invaders. The final day felt electric, like the calm before a thunderstorm. Octavian ordered his war horns to sound at dawn, and the siege began. At first light, Roman siege engines rolled forward. Catapults hurled heavy stones. Ballistae launched bolts that shattered ramparts. Ladders and siege towers advanced under a hail of Egyptian arrows. Cleopatra's archers and slingers fought with primal fervor, targeting siege crews. Antony's Roman veterans led counterattacks at the gates, but Octavian's disciplined legions pressed relentlessly. Smoke and dust filled the air. Egyptian scythed chariots attempted a daring sally, crashing into Roman ranks. For a moment, the legions reeled, but Octavian's cavalry encircled them, turning the tide. On the walls, Cleopatra personally directed archers, refusing to yield an inch. Roars of war drowned out any hope of diplomacy. This was total war for the fate of Egypt. Seeing the crumbling defenses, Antony mustered his most loyal cohorts for a decisive counterstrike at the main gate. Leading the charge himself, he fought like a man possessed. cutting through Octavian's forward lines. For a few awe-inspiring moments, Cleopatra's soldiers rallied, pushing the Romans back from the city entrance. Yet, Octavian, a seasoned strategist, swiftly redeployed reserves. Fresh Roman cohorts flanked Antony's forces, pinning them between the gate and a near-impenetrable shield wall. Blood soaked the sands. Despite their unmatched courage, the outnumbered defenders started to break, retreating in disarray. Antony, grievously wounded, was carried back within the city. A hush settled, the intangible sense that Cleopatra's final defense had been shattered. With Antony gravely injured, Cleopatra found herself commanding 30,000 Egyptians on the brink of collapse. Roman troops poured into the city's outer districts, setting ablaze storehouses and besieging the royal palace. Civilians huddled in terror, while Cleopatra confronted the impossible choice: surrender or keep fighting. In a final act of defiance, she gathered her remaining defenders at the palace courtyard. Under the midday sun, Cleopatra vowed they would not be slaves to Rome. Some 10,000 battered warriors rallied around her. They formed a shield ring, repelling wave after wave of Roman assaults. Arrows rained from balconies, the courtyard floor slick with blood. For hours, they held against insurmountable odds, forging a legend etched into the soul of Egypt. But unstoppable Roman might eventually tore through Cleopatra's lines, scattering any hope of victory. As Roman standards flew over Alexandria's towers, Cleopatra retreated into her final sanctuary. With Antony dying of his wounds, the reality of Roman triumph was undeniable. Legend says Cleopatra, refusing to be paraded through Rome as a trophy, arranged her own end by venomous asp. Others claim she used poison. The result was the same. The last queen of Egypt took her life, concluding a dynasty that traced back to Alexander the Great. Octavian entered the palace victorious. His ambition realized, he folded Egypt into the Roman domain, ensuring himself endless grain supplies and wealth. The 30,000 defenders who had pledged their lives for Cleopatra's cause lay scattered across the city, an army undone by Rome's unstoppable expansion. A new era dawned as Egypt was now a Roman province. Even in defeat, Cleopatra's courage and the sacrifice of Egypt's 30,000 men echo through the centuries. Their desperate stand against an empire at its zenith became a timeless symbol of love, honor, and tragedy. For Rome, the victory cemented its path to imperial dominance under Octavian, soon to be Emperor Augustus. Thank you for joining us in Fate of an Empire, Rome versus Egypt, the final battle of 30,000 warriors. We hope this sweeping odyssey brought to life the drama and complexity behind one of history's most iconic showdowns. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more epic journeys into the heart of ancient conflicts. Until next time, may these stories remind us that every empire, no matter how glorious, must one day meet its reckoning.